started. So, welcome everyone to week 3 of our Easeful Presence month. So we will continue that theme of working on balance and harmony and ease in the midst of challenge, staying very present with what is, staying as balanced as we can be, and trying to bring harmony even into the midst of difficulty. So the first week we worked a lot with body. Now we work with all of these layers all the time, but our emphasis in the first week was finding balance in the body. Last week we really emphasized finding balance in the breath. So we talked a lot about 4-part breathing. We talked a little bit about natural breathing and subtle breathing, breathing through the nose. And today our focus, our emphasis will be on finding balance and harmony in the mind, probably the toughest of the 3. And so we'll continue to lean into cultivating balance in the body and cultivating balance in the breath, so that finding balance and harmony and easeful presence in the mind is supported by those other parts, right? And especially the breath is a beautiful helper in accessing harmony and ease and balance in the mind, because when the mind wants to spin out and tell stories and become chaotic, we can always come back into the experience of our breath or the experience of our body. But especially the breath can be very, very helpful. We'll continue also to work with this idea of locating where the trouble is, and then really leaning into the experience, the exploration. So if there is imbalance in the mind, if there's a bit of chaos in the mind, to just really be with that and to let ourselves feel that, to experience what is happening, what are the thoughts, the stories, the narratives, the feelings that are coming up, and then to very deliberately begin to ponder, how can I tend to that? What are some remedies that I can bring to bear here? And maybe it's moving into a few balancing shapes in the body. Maybe it's focusing on the 4-part breath, or maybe it's bringing compassion to those thoughts, or curiosity. It's like, what is that thought all about? Where did that come from? Rather than getting carried away by our thoughts, or getting carried away by our feelings, or becoming angry with them, or getting wrapped up in the stories, is to just be with them. And of course, that's the last part of Let Be. So we'll continue that theme. I may be a little less explicit in naming it, but it's always there. That locating what is going on, experiencing it, exploring it, and then tending to it in some deliberate way, and ultimately just being with what remains. So that continues to be our work today. So I invite you then to find your spot, either a seat or a lying down position for your opening centering. Remembering, right, that we do this with great care, with great concern, with great tenderness for our body, our breath, and our minds. So find what serves you today. Maybe not making a habitual choice of what it is that you always do, but really pondering what will bring the greatest ease into my body and my breath and my mind right now. Maybe that's sitting on a chair. Maybe that's lying down. Maybe that's reclining on a couch. Give yourself the joy and the wisdom of choosing wisely and deliberately. And then allow yourself to settle in. And notice if there's anything else that you could tend to here with a little bit more care, like maybe a warm blanket or socks on your feet. And just notice. And as you begin to settle yourself in this compassionate and kind-hearted way, perhaps also make your discerning choice about how you'd like to place your hands, and how you might like to place your eyelids. And of course, by now you know there are no right or wrong choices. There are just the choices we make in this moment. And then there are new choices that we can make when that original choice no longer serves. Whenever you feel settled in, gently locate very spaciously the entirety of your physical experience, the entirety of your body. Maybe just a sort of big general sweep through what your physical body is bringing along this morning. Maybe there are little traces of the kind of night, the kind of sleep you had. Or maybe there's a footprint of whether you have already eaten and what you've eaten, whether you've nourished your body, hydrated your body. Not to look at anything with judgment, but to locate the body and then experience what is present. Explore what you are bringing with you in your physical layer. Exploration is always open-hearted and open-minded. It's not about evaluating or judging. It's about meeting with compassion whatever is there. And so as you experience and explore your body, perhaps also begin to notice or to discern what might tend to what you are noticing, even just a tiny bit more. This could be as simple as gratitude, or it could be directing a sweet breath into a particularly challenging body part. Or it could be an expression of compassion, patience. And then invite yourself to simply be with your body, with whatever remains. The acronym letting be is very deliberate. It's not a letting go. There's nothing that you need to let go of. You can be with whatever is. That's much less effortful and much more easeful. And then bring that same tender curiosity to your breath, to the vitality, the energy you're bringing along this morning. Locating perhaps where the breath is moving in the body most tangibly. And then exploring, experiencing how your inhalations and exhalations are unfolding. Perhaps whether there are pauses at the top or the bottom of the breath. Maybe experiencing the sound or the texture that may be present this morning. Experiencing the vitality or the energy expressed by breath and body jointly. Notice if anything could use some tending to. Maybe the breath could be a little more subtle or more deliberately through the nose. Or maybe your energy just needs a bit of compassion, a bit of kindness, a bit of patience. can you allow yourself to let be what is in both body and energy, body and breath. Finding a certain ease in simply being with what is. As you then gently locate your mind state perhaps, or the stories or feelings that you're bringing with you in your mind this morning. They too may be reverberations of what has already happened today or over the course of the night. Can you explore what is present in this layer of your human experience? Can you explore with the same open-hearted curiosity and patience that you brought to body and energy, foregoing any kind of judgment or criticism? As you simply explore and experience what is on your mind and how your mind is showing up this morning. Is it a little monkey jumping from thought to thought? Or is it more like a butterfly, a bit distractible, moving from flower to flower, but with kind of a purpose? Or is it more clear and direct, focused and present? And depending on what you're experiencing here, is there something that you could do to tend to your mind? Maybe a sense of understanding of, oh, I know where this thought is coming from. Or a sense of patience, ah yes, this is a familiar feeling. Or a sense of compassion. Yes, this is hard. Doesn't have to be anything monumental, it could also be a gentle breath. And then can you allow yourself to be with body, breath, and mind just as they are, letting everything be, and sitting with it, with your wisdom, your awareness, your understanding, with that deeper intelligence of this next layer of the human experience, this capacity to take perspective, to understand the bigger context, to bring patience, compassion, loving kindness, equanimity to whatever it is we encounter, when we can allow ourselves simply to let be. And when this wise, intuitive sort of tending to happens from this deeper level of experience, sometimes there is even a sense of joy, or at least a sense of ease, or hope, or appreciation for what is. This is what's possible for you in this moment. Can you be tender with yourself? Can you be with that reality? And then if it seems auspicious, I invite you to bring your hands to your heart as you perhaps lower your head to your heart. To notice if from this deeper place of wisdom, there is an intention that arises for you this morning. Some quality you might want to cultivate, not a goal to set or an outcome to achieve, but something meaningful that seems important. such an intention emerges for you, you could choose to draw it very deliberately into your heart and into all your layers of experience, perhaps with a breath in. And then you could choose, perhaps with a breath out, to send that intention silently outward into the greater web of life, into your community. And whenever you feel ready, you can release your hands if they were lifted. You can rise to a seat if you are lying on the earth. You might open your eyes if they were closed. And lift your gaze if it was lowered. And once you have arrived in a seat from wherever you were before, and maybe you were already there, we'll start again with this heart breath that we did last week. So if you would like to do that, start with your hands at your heart, and maybe just take a moment to be with what is, to once again acknowledge that you're sitting here whole, grounded and connected in all of your layers, your body, your breath, your mind, your wisdom, your joy. It's all sitting here with you. That in and of itself is a miracle. And then perhaps with an inhalation, you choose to open your arms wide to whatever range of motion is kind for your body. And with an exhalation, perhaps the hands travel back to the heart. And allow yourself simply to pulse here for a few rounds of breath, guided by your inhalations, maybe the pauses at the top of the inhalations, your exhalations, maybe the pauses at the bottom of the exhalations. And can you locate your attention in this very simple flow? Allowing yourself the joy of just truly exploring what it is like in body, breath, and mind to open your heart and your arms and your eyes and your ears as you breathe in. And then to draw into your wisdom by bringing the hands to the heart with the breath out. A couple more times, so finish the round you're on, and then take one more breath cycle. And when your hands return to your heart, just sit with the reverberations of this movement and particularly locate what may be going on in your mind. That is our focus today. Can you explore what is present here? The mind often has strong opinions about how something ought to be. And so maybe there are stories here of impatience, or aversion, or pleasure, or enjoyment. And can you simply be with that? No need to tend to anything right now, just explore. And you can stay here with your hands at your heart, or you can begin to move a bit, but with that focus still on the mind and on exploring how the mind evolves. As you perhaps inhale and reach the arms up above you, and exhale to draw them behind you, maybe interlacing them there, and just holding them steady behind you. If you're on a chair, they could also reach for the back of the chair and ground themselves to the back or the sides of the chair. If they don't meet easily, take a sock or a cushion or even just your shirt or something and connect the hands, maybe with a strap or whatever you have available. And breathe a few rounds with your hands behind you like this, opening the heart in a more challenging way perhaps, and explore how this reverberates into the mind. At the end of your next exhalation, and so patiently wait for the exhale, don't jump ahead of it, very gently release the hands, and with the inhalation, lift them up. And with the exhalation, draw them down the way you brought them up to begin with. And just notice if anything shifted in mind, body, or breath. And with your next inhalation, if you're ready, you can always wait. Inhale the arms up yet again. Exhale them when you are ready to exhale. Interlace again, but with the other pinky finger on the outside. So you have a very natural interlace. This time do it the way that feels a little bit odd. And just see if you can roll the shoulders open here. If you can't, then separate the hands and bring a strap or a sock, or just have the hands at the sides without touching. It's more important to keep the heart open than the hands clasped here. Take one round of breath. And at the end of your exhalation, maybe during that pause when there is no movement, gently separate the hands so that then with the inhalation, they can travel up. And with the exhalation, they will travel back down, sort of at the front of the body, and come to rest wherever it feels good for you. And then tune in yet again and notice what you're experiencing in your mind. Is there something that needs tending to? If there's a bit of impatience, can you send compassion? If there's a bit of aversion, can you send understanding? And then the next time you inhale, if you'd like to continue to move, bring the arms out to the side, up and overhead. And this time, bring your palms forward and drawing the left arm toward the back of the body, let yourself just gently lean to the right. This won't be a big range of motion. With the inhalation, you'll come back to center. And with the next exhalation, let the right arm draw toward the back plane of the body as you lean to the left. And just move like this with your breath. Inhaling to rise and exhaling to draw to the side, always drawing the opposite arm toward the back plane of the body so that the heart stays very open. Maybe there are little pauses in your breath, so there's a moment of no movement when you're upright, and a moment of no movement while you're in your side bend. That might be a bit more challenging. And stay very connected to the experience here in your mind. What is your mind doing? What are your thoughts doing? Are they creating a bit of chatter, or are they very keenly focused in the motion, in the dance of body and breath? If your mind can stay anchored there, perhaps there's nothing else that needs tending to, because it is present, grounded, balanced, and harmonious in the here and now. The next time you have side bent to the left, assuming you started with me with a side bend to the right. That's your last movement. When you come up from that, you can descend your arms back to a comfortable position, but don't rush your way there. Notice if the mind wants to hurry you along because it knows what's coming, or if you can simply be present with what is. You might need just a couple of little shoulder circles, so notice what's happening in your body here. If there was a lot of effort, maybe a little bit of tension crept in, that needs tending to. But if nothing like that is there, then you don't need to do that. So be your own teacher here. And then from here, we'll take a few little rotations, and you have options here. One possibility is to do kind of what we did last week in a slightly less complicated form, where you bring your arms together. Remember that rock the baby movement? And you could very gently begin to rock your baby in whatever arm position is fine for you. The main thing is, especially if you're seated on the ground, to also let the hips move in the direction of the opposite hip into the direction of the turn. And so make this very dynamic. Like, let your whole body begin to move. You could, if this is really hard seated, of course, just get up and do this standing and swing the arms more freely. And just let yourself feel the joy of not thinking about a movement, but just letting the body find its way here. And if at some point the arms or the hands at the elbow feels too restricted, you could, if it feels good in your body, begin to reach into the direction of the rotation. And just notice how this might reverberate differently in body, breath, and especially today in your mind. Does your mind have an opinion about what feels better, what's more engaging, what's more annoying? And just be with that. And take maybe 2 or 3 more rounds of this. And then let the movement begin to slow down. Maybe you even come back to hands at elbows to just very naturally make that movement a little bit smaller. And then at some point, just let it be. And take a moment to sense inward. Your energy may have shifted quite a bit here. And when the energy shifts, sometimes the mind shifts as well. And now you can, of course, stay here. But if you are interested, begin to plot how you might come to standing. You could also come to a seat, but it would be better if that were a seat on a chair as opposed to a seat on the floor. So if you are on the earth, find your way up either to being seated on a chair or standing. Yogi's choice. If you don't have a wall or a chair near you, do go ahead and find something that you can grab onto, because we'll do a little bit of balancing again. And it might be nice for you to have like a chair that you can bring a hand to if you're not seated on the chair. If you're seated on the chair, then you're absolutely fine without an additional item. And we'll start with a little bit of tuning into the feet now. You might even take a moment to look at your feet, as long as that doesn't destabilize you. You could always have your hand at a wall or on the chair. And just notice if what your toes look like this morning. And maybe lift all of the toes off the ground if you can. And then see, and it actually really helps to do this with the hands at the same time. So spread your fingers as you spread your toes, okay? Somehow there is like a connection. And then see if you can put down one toe at a time or one finger at a time, starting with the little toes. And then the fourth toe, so the one that the finger that you might have a ring on. And then the middle toe or middle fingers. And then the index toes or fingers. And finally, the big toes and big fingers, and the thumbs. And just spread your toes wide here and stay visually connected. But notice then from the inside out, did that shift anything in how you are feeling the earth? And you can let go of the hands at this point, but we usually are able to spread the toes and lower the toes one at a time more easily if we do the same thing with the hands. But you may have some codependent toes that kind of plopped down together. That's really, really common. And then from here, hopefully you're close enough to your chair that you have something to hold onto or your wall with your toes so nicely spread and ready. Lift up onto them any amount. And if you don't feel comfortable lifting onto the toes, you could imagine lifting onto the toes. Maybe your heels barely lift away from the earth, but you imagine that you're rising up. And so use the real live range of motion that feels good for you and safe for you, but in your mind, lift all the way. And then notice if as you lift, your heart collapses. And very deliberately, and you come up and down. Sorry, I don't think I said that. I'm showing it, but of course we're coming up and down. So inhaling and exhaling in a rhythm. But see if your heart can stay open here. So the tendency sometimes is when we get unbalanced, or maybe even just worried that we lose our balance, we kind of shrink inward. So if you can keep the heart open here without flaring the ribs, so much to think about. Do this a couple more times. You could even open the arms to the side as you rise. And if you feel stable, maybe try a round or two without the chair. Not striving for something big here, but being very curious about the subtlety of this movement. And then let yourself rest and sense into your feet again, dropping your mind into the feet. See if the mind can become very curious about how the feet are grounding into the earth now. You can stay here and just sort of ponder whether you have 3 corners or 4 corners of the feet. Or if you would like, you can begin to take yet another movement. And what we will do next, and again you can have a hand on the chair, is you're going to take your right, you're going to pour your weight into the left foot. Then you're going to lift to the right toes, or you might lift all the way up and step the right foot across the left. And then lift and lower. And then the same thing with the other side, lifting very deliberately, and then moving the left across the right. You can stay connected to your chair, or you can ponder whether you'd like to do this without a chair. The slower and more deliberate you are, the more of a balance challenge this will be. So if you go really fast, that may look really exciting or feel really exciting to your mind, but you will actually cultivate more muscular activation and need to sort of let all the small muscles collaborate to keep you balanced if you move really slowly. And you might feel this, right? When we become unbalanced, what happens? The movement becomes really fast. We kind of want to return the foot to the earth. So if you want to have a hand at a chair, do that. That's better than making the movement too fast. If you lose track of where you are, just start over. If this feels comfortable, you could, as you lift the right foot, also lift the right arm, step the right foot down, and then let the right arm travel across. Inhale to bring the arm up, let the arm come first, then the foot, and then they both travel down. Looks pretty simple, pretty much a balanced challenge when we do it at this very slow and deliberate speed. Your mind can't zone out here. Your mind has to stay present. And so perhaps just notice that. Notice how much easier it is to keep the mind focused when we give it a job. One more time to each side. Which means that if you started with the right side, when you've done your side bend and side step with the left leg and arm, then you are done. You can stay still for a moment and absorb this, or you can now give yourself the joy of doing this movement quickly. And if that's not a joy, well, then you can do it slowly, or you can imagine doing it, or you can just invent something completely different. Finish the round you're on, and then take one more round. And then come into stillness and just notice how you would like to recover from this. Maybe you need a little bit of a wiggle or a shake. Maybe you need a moment with hands at heart, standing and tuning in. Maybe whatever it is, right? Just let it emerge and see that as the tending to moment. Because it's basically your body's way of re-regulating the nervous system, maybe even re-regulating the mind from the concentration. So those movements are not super hard movements from a physical perspective, but they're beautiful concentration practices. All right, from here, I invite you yet again to make use of the chair if you have it. This time, you're going to bring your feet a little bit closer together, which is more of a balance challenge, by the way, right? You could notice this if you stand with feet wide apart, you're usually a lot more stable. The closer your feet are, the less stable you are. So it's a good thing to know if you're standing around chatting to somebody. It's nice to stand with the legs a little wider apart because you'll feel more stable. But right now, we want to challenge our balance, so we'll start with feet close together. And then the task is to begin by stepping one toe out, way out to the side, kind of whatever range of motion works for you. Then the foot comes back, and then the other foot steps out. Back and forth. You might want to have a hand on a chair here to feel comfortable in the beginning. And at some point, if you would like, you could take this across the width of your mat. So now you're taking multiple steps, side to side. And if you're not limited by your mat, you could take this all the way across your room. Multiple steps to one side and then multiple steps to the other side, feet coming together at the end of your journey here. And then at some point, find your way back to your mat. Maybe just this time stepping a few times simply side to side. And then finding your center and finding stillness this time with your feet together for just a moment. When you're ready to move on, you can bring your chair back. And from here, lift the right leg or the left leg, whichever one isn't right by the chair actually. So I'm going to pretend I'm holding onto a chair on the left. And then let the right leg travel out to the side. Should I move my chair so that you can see what I'm doing. And move the leg just forward and back a few times. Maybe ultimately experimenting with whether you can bring the hands to the heart as you move the leg out. And you might notice what's the more difficult task, moving slowly or moving quickly. And you might yet again notice that moving slowly may awaken more muscular action. And so it's really kind of nice for your body. Next time you have opened and closed, let the foot come to the earth when you're done. Recover. Notice if your breath is a little choppy now, and come back to your natural breathing. And don't start on the other side until you feel re-regulated in your nervous system. You may have to move your chair. We'll do the other side. So now the right hand would be on something and left leg would lift and move out. In and out. You can try different speeds. Feel the reverberations of different speeds into the body and the mind. The mind may want to speed you up here. Maybe you can invite it to be patient. If at some point the hands can come to the heart, invite that. And notice perhaps with amazement how quickly your body learns to calibrate itself into balance when you give it the opportunity to practice something with patience. And then whenever you feel ready to do so, the next time your left leg comes forward, you can set it down next to the right leg. Either wide stance or narrow stance, yogi's choice. You now know the difference. And just notice the reverberations of this movement in body, breath, and mind. We're going to find the same leg position yet again. So if you'd like, you could have your left hand now on a support to lift the right leg up. And then bring it out. And then from here, begin to draw circles. So you start from this outer position and you draw the circle to sort of the front. It's probably more of an oval. And then take less and less support under the hand that is on your wall or your chair until maybe you just have one fingertip on that chair. If you notice whether your body is relatively stable and if your mind is focused, if your mind is a little monkey, don't take your hand off the chair. But if your mind is really tracking the movement, maybe the chair or the hand comes off the chair. When you are ready to be done with making these circles, bring the hand back to your support and let yourself end from a supported position. And tune in. Yeah, I love that I see some wiggles and shakes on the screen. That's perfect, right? You decide how you would like to transition from side to side. Some of you may need to wiggle and move a little bit, and some of you may want to be still. That's tending to. That's the T in let be, right? Is knowing what helps you tend to the experience that's present. I can only make suggestions. Only you can know what is really, really helpful to you. And then whenever you're ready to switch sides, bring your chair with you, because with the circles, you kind of want to have the option, right? To bring your hand to something. And then whenever you feel ready, excuse me, to switch sides, always patient, right? Second side, it's sometimes really easy to jump into it and then to not be as deliberate and focused and present. So let yourself arrive in this moment. And then when you feel really ready, then lift the left leg up and out. And start from this outward position to draw the circle forward and down and back. Your speed here. Notice if you have twins or siblings on your two sides. For some of us, maybe it's really, really a similar experience on both sides. For some of us, it may be hugely, profoundly different. Notice if you can bring less and less, or bring less and less support into the movement from your hand, and more from your mental focus, your calm breath, your balanced body, and maybe at some point you can experiment with whether the hand can come from away from the chair. But you know what? It's better to stay balanced than to have no hand on the chair. So notice what your propensities are. If you're a striver, you may want that hand away. But maybe the real tending to comes from leaning into support. When you are ready to discontinue the circles, first bring the hand back to the chair, and then let the leg descend. And notice what you intuitively feel will tend to your experience best after this second side. Maybe you want to move or wiggle or stretch. Maybe you want to regulate your nervous system. What suits you? You can continue to do what you're doing. You can continue to simply ponder, or you can turn your chair. So, well, actually, it's kind of yogi's choice. I kind of prefer having my chair with the seat facing me, but you may prefer having the back of the chair. But where we're headed, and we did this a couple of weeks ago too, we're just recapturing it, is into this position that we call a warrior 3 in yoga. So you'll have quite a distance from the chair. And the key to this particular balance on one leg is to let the movement be initiated by the leg that will lift behind you. So often the tendency is to let the movement start with the body coming forward and then the leg kind of follows. You could try this for a moment and you'll feel pretty unstable. But if instead you focus, you locate your focus in your left leg, and then think about the right foot stepping out behind you. You don't even have to lift it yet. You're just stepping the right toes out behind you. And then think about lifting the right leg up behind you as if you had a string on the back of the leg, on your thigh, and somebody's pulling your thigh up behind you, and just allow the body to pivot forward. That may be a much more balanced movement. And then the hands can land on the chair if they would like to. Or maybe one hand lands there, or maybe no hand lands there. It's yogi's choice, but the power of the balance comes from lifting the back leg and from balancing on the standing leg. It doesn't come so much from the hands, even if they are on the chair. And then whenever you're ready to be done with this, lower the right leg, but let it take the body up as it lowers and come back to standing. Did you feel the difference in how you move into the shape with the leg instead of the body? Maybe? Yeah. All right. Let yourself absorb the movement as it happened on this side. So let yourself enjoy and tend to whatever needs tending to before you rush to the other side. Your mind already knows where we're headed, so it may kind of jump ahead, but actually invite it to follow the lead of the body and the breath. And when your breath feels settled, pour your weight into the right foot. Step the left foot behind you, big toe anchored to the earth. Feel stable here. You might imagine drawing the low ribs toward the hips a bit to engage your core so that you feel strong at your center. But then let the movement happen from the back of the left leg as if you had an imaginary string attached to that thigh and somebody is pulling that leg up behind you and the body simply pivots forward with that motion of the leg. And then stay lifting through that leg. Maybe experimenting with one hand on the chair, maybe two hands on the chair, maybe no hands on the chair. Notice your side-to-side differences. We all have a dominant hand. We also tend to have a dominant leg. When you feel ready to come down, maybe have your hands on the chair and let the downward movement be guided by the leg just as you did the upward motion. And when you're back on your feet, maybe this time you want to jog it out a little bit, because that was a lot of weight bearing on that standing leg. Really great for bone health, you guys. I know I'm talking a lot about balance, but balancing is really, really great for bone health as well. So just notice how you might like to shake yourself out here at the end of all of that work. When you balance, you bring loads into the body that are pretty atypical for most of what we do in life. And so there are challenges to muscles and bones that maybe don't have as much challenge as they do in daily life. And that really invites strength into the muscles and bone mass into the bones. So yeah, balancing is fun for a lot of reasons. And then sometimes you have the joy afterwards of really feeling interested in just moving and wiggling in different kinds of ways. And from that joy, whenever you feel ready, let yourself come into a moment of locating all of your attention inward again, exploring sensations in the body, exploring sensations in the breath, exploring all of the movements of the mind. And then tending to yourself, maybe with a moment of gratitude that you went through this practice, that you tried perhaps kind of strange things. And invite yourself to come into a way of just being with what is, of letting be, relinquishing all doing. As you ponder where you might like to take your closing meditation. Would you like to sit on a chair, lie on a bed, recline on a couch, lie on the floor? What suits you? What is your preferred position? And whenever you have made that decision, let yourself make a very deliberate transition to that spot, wherever it is, and lovingly settle yourself into that shape. Locate your body in that position and explore if there are any needs that could be tended to. Maybe a warm blanket, maybe a prop under the knees or the head and the shoulders. Maybe a different hand placement. And when you have tended to your body, then simply let it be. Release and surrender the body to gravity. Locate your breath. Experience what is present there. Notice if anything needs tending to. Perhaps the air could flow through the nose. Perhaps the breath could become more subtle and quiet. And when the breath feels tended to, simply let it be. As you surrender the flow of the breath to the movement of life force that flows through all of us. And then locate your mind. Explore what is present there. and tend to it in whatever way seems auspicious, without getting sucked into stories, without riding the mind train that presents itself. And then let be whatever is. Surrendering all mental fluctuations to your deeper inner wisdom that will bring you back to what needs coming back to later. And then I invite you into about a minute of silence until my voice brings you back. Very gently reawaken your senses, perhaps noticing the sounds and aromas around you. Perhaps sensing into the experiences within you. Noticing the flow of breath, the sensations in the body. Perhaps noticing if there are little wiggles or stretches that would feel good for you. Perhaps tending to the breath with attention and compassion, keenly attentive to the inhalation as air travels in, compassionately present with the exhalation as breath travels out. And if you're lying on the earth and you would like to close the practice in a seat, this would be a great time to make that transition. But you're always welcome to close the practice lying down. Once you are where you'd like to be, I invite you to bring your hands to your heart if that suits you. As you lower your head to your heart. So take a moment to tune in. If there's a takeaway from your time on the mat today, something meaningful or interesting or curious that you would like to settle into your tissues, that you might like to breathe into your heart or into all of your layers of experience. Something that you might like to bring into your memory banks for recall later. And maybe this takeaway in some way merges with your intention, with the quality you had hoped to cultivate on the mat today, to create a dedication of the merit from your time on the mat that brings the beauty of the practice from the individual to the collective. that acknowledges that yoga is not just about making ourselves feel better, but it is about creating a better society, a kinder, more compassionate community. That the tending to that we do in yoga and the being with doesn't just apply to ourselves, but it applies to every relationship. And so if a dedication arises for you, perhaps you draw it into your own heart first as you take a breath in. And then perhaps you very deliberately send it silently outward into the greater web of life as you release a breath out. Thank you all so very, very much for being such a dedicated part of this Thursday morning